the end of this video, you're going to learn about the map, filter, and reduce method in JavaScript. So for this purpose, I just have created an index.html file, and I've, you can see right now, but you can see I'm referencing this app.js file here, in which I'm going to write all the JavaScript to explain those functions. And I've run my file with the live server and opened the console. And now if I console log something like object, save this, I'm going to get object printed out here. And now I'm going to show you how map works by example. So if let's say I have a scenario in my app where I want to create a new array from this array I have over here, but I want to each element of this array want to add 2 to the number. So if I want to have, instead of 1, have 3 there, instead of 2 have 4, instead of 3 have 5, and so on. Map is perfect for this, and I'm going to use map by accessing numbers and calling the map function on the array. So this map function just takes in a callback with 3 arguments. The first one is not optional, and the other 2 are. So we're going to use just the first one. You can pass in a regular function here, but I'm going to pass an arrow function like this. And if you didn't know, an arrow function is just a regular function, but the syntax is a little bit different. So instead of saying function and then the name, or maybe even without a name, you omit those 2 and just straight up write those brackets here, and then inside of those brackets you can of course pass in arguments, and then here you have equal sign, and then this greater than, and then the body of your function. And here you can of course define variables, and of course you can return something. And what this map does, it loops through this array and it returns a result, and this result for each of the elements. So if your array like this has 5 numbers, it will execute 5 times and return 5 different results, and those results are the elements of the new array that we are creating. So here it takes up as the first argument the item or the element in this array. So if I return here the item that we are passing in here, we're going to get a new array which is going to be exactly the same as this one. So I'm going to save this result in a constant variable, or array I should say, called mapped, and I'm going to print this out. And if I print this out, as you can see, we got the same array as we have already, because we're just looping through all of these numbers and then returning the number. And usually you of course wouldn't like to get the same array, because what's the point in that? And you do something like, maybe, as I said previously, maybe you want a new array, but each item should be greater than by 2, and you return item plus 2. If I save this, and I'll get a new array, and I'm going to get 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And I'm going to have 2 added to each of those elements. So now let's check out and let's see how I can explain this filter array. This one is very interesting as well. So in the filter array, these are all, especially the filter and map one, are very similar to one another. So I'll access the numbers, the array once again, and I'll call the filter method on it. And this filter method again takes in a callback as an argument, and again I'm going to use an arrow function like this, and here it takes in again the current item or element we're looping through, we're calling the callback for. So if in here, instead of returning like in map the item or some modification of the item or element, we're going to return a condition, and if this condition is true for the item that we're currently passing through, then this item will get added in this array, in this new array that the filter method is creating. So here if I return something like, as I said, you should return a condition, and if this condition is true for this item over here, then this item will get added in the new array we're getting from this filter method. So I'm going to return a condition that says item greater than 2, and if this item is greater than 2, currently, if the current item is greater than 2, it's going to be added in our array. I'm going to save this and then come here and say const and say filtered for filtered array, and I'm going to print out now this filtered array, and as you can see we got 3, 4 and 5, and that's because the item 1 is not greater than 2, and since this condition is not true, this first item that we're passing through, we're iterating through, is not going to get added. And again, that applies for the second element, which is 2. This one again doesn't get added to the array, but 3, then we come to 3, and 3 is greater, as well as 4 and 5. Also, I wanted to mention that this filter method is very good if you want to remove an element from an array. So for example, let's say I want to remove this 5 from this array. So, and there's not really an easier method, I haven't actually found out, to remove this item than to just filter through the array and just add all the elements into a new array except the element I want to remove. So if I want to remove this element, I'm going to say that the condition will be each element should not be equal to 5. So if the element is not 5, immediately add it into this filtered array. So we're going to get all the elements except the element we want to remove, which is 5, just like this. So the reduce method is a little bit different from map and filter methods, in two different ways. And the first way is that this reduce method actually returns a single value instead of a whole new array, like you have from map and filter methods. And the second difference is that it again takes in a callback as an argument, but this time this callback takes in 2 arguments instead of 1. And you're going to see an example right now. So I'm going to call access this numbers array and then call the reduce method on it. And then here I want to pass in again a callback function. I'm going to just pass in an arrow function like I have previously. And as I said before, this takes in 2 arguments, and first of which is an initial value, and I'm going to call it initial value. And for the second parameter, it takes in the second parameter is actually each item that we're looping through. And here I will return the initial value plus the item itself. And the initial value, if not specified which value it has, it takes in the first element as its value. So it's 2 in our example. This initial value will start as 2. And if I change this to 3, then it will have 3. And since this is not specified, it will get the second one, the first element, and it will have the value of 2. And then I'm going to show you by example how this reduce method works. And since it's not specified, we'll get 2, and then it will start executing each callback from the second element. So the first element here will be 1, and then 2, and then 1, and again 2. And what we'll do is, first of all, this is 2, and it will return 2 plus the second item actually, 1. And this result here will become the initial value for the next iteration. So this is equal to 3, and in the next iteration, here in the return statement, and I'm going to say return here, we will have 3 plus this item that we're passing in here, which will be 2. And we will have something like 3, because we got 3 as the initial value in our previous iteration, and then we get 2, and this is equal to 5, etc. And the result of this function will be the last initial value that we get here. And remember, this initial value gets passed in like this in each iteration, in each next iteration. And you can even print those out. So if I say console log and then say initial value here, or actually I'll use this string here and then again print out this initial value here, and I'll again print out the item here. And now, as you can see, the initial value is 2. As I said, if it's not specified, it gets the first element as its value. And if I change this to something like 4, it will have 4 as its first value, but I'll just leave it to 2. And now in the first iteration, it starts looping from the second number, which is 1 in our example here. So we have 2 and 1, which will equal to 3. We'll return 3. And in the next iteration, again we're printing the initial value, which is 3 now. It has changed. And now we're looping through the third number, and it's our second iteration. So this is the item we're looping through. We're printing it out here. And then 3 plus 2 is 5, and so on and so on. And that's how we get, let's see what we get. We get a single value, which is the result. And I'm going to save all of this that we get inside of this result variable. I'm going to print out this result. And if I print out this result, is 8. And here's the entire code for the reduce method. And that is if you're not giving it this initial value, a specific value. And if you want to give this, instead of 2, let's say you want to give it a value of 10, then you can do this by adding in this argument here after you give it this callback argument. And here, this initial value will have the value of 10 instead of 2. And the second thing that you get with this is that instead of starting from this number, from the second one, you start from the first one. And if I save this, now you get, and if I save this right about now, then you'll get something like this. You'll get the initial value being of 10, and then the first item that we'll start looping through is going to be the first number. We're not starting from the second one. The first number will be 2, and hence we'll get a different result. We'll get actually 10 more than the previous result, which was 8, because we're starting from 10 now. If you enjoy videos like this one, make sure to subscribe here. Thank you so much for watching, and peace out.